We've all done it. Clicking I agree without even a glance, sealing a deal with just a handshake, or signing a giant stack of papers. All of those things, they're contracts. They're the promises that literally build our world. But here's the thing, they don't have to be scary or complicated. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and decode the whole thing, from the simplest promise to the most complex legal document. Let's jump right in. So, let's start with the million-dollar question, right? The one that this is all about. What is the secret sauce? What's that magic ingredient that turns a simple "I promise" into something that a court of law will actually back you up on? It's probably not what you're thinking, but by the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly what it is. All right, so before we get into how contracts are born, how they live their lives, and, what happens when they die a fiery death, we've got to build a solid foundation. Let's start with the absolute basics. What even is a contract? At its core, it sounds pretty simple, right? But this definition is incredibly powerful. A contract is really just the official blueprint for a promise. It takes a casual understanding and gives it real legal muscle. It's about agreeing to do something. And just as important, sometimes it's about agreeing not to do something. Okay, now these agreements, they come in two main flavors. You've got your express contract. That's the one we all think of. It's all spelled out in words, whether you say them out loud or put them in writing. But then there's the implied contract. This one is created just by what you do. Think about your morning coffee run. You point at the croissant, the barista hands it over, you tap your card. Nobody says, "I hereby offer to purchase this pastry," right? But your actions just created a perfectly legal contract. There's one more key difference we gotta talk about. A bilateral contract is a two-way street. It's, "I promise to pay you if you promise to design my website." See? It's a promise for a promise. A unilateral contract, on the other hand, is more of a one-way street. It's a promise waiting for an action. The classic example is a lost dog poster with a reward. The owner is promising to pay you for the act of finding their dog. You don't have to promise you'll look, but if you actually find the dog and bring it back, boom, you just completed the contract. So we know what a contract is, but how does one actually spring to life? Well, it's not magic, it's more like a recipe. And to be legally legit, every single agreement needs 4, and only 4, essential ingredients. And here they are: capacity, mutual consent, legality, and consideration. I want you to think of these as the 4 legs on a table. If even one is missing, the whole thing just tips over. So let's take a closer look at each one. First up, capacity. This one's pretty straightforward. Are the people making this deal legally allowed to? The law says certain people are out, like minors, anyone a court has said is of unsound mind, and, with some exceptions, most convicts. The bottom line is, you have to be a competent, legally recognized adult for your promise to stick. Next is mutual consent. Honestly, this is the real heart of any agreement. It's a dance. It starts with an offer. The other person can then accept that offer, or they can come back with a counteroffer. Now here's the super important part. A counteroffer doesn't just change the original offer, it completely kills it. It's gone forever. This back and forth dance continues until one person finally says yes and accepts the exact offer that's sitting on the table. And the last ingredient is consideration. Don't let the fancy legal word fool you. This is just what each person is getting and what they're giving up. It's the why of the whole deal. And this is where we bust a huge myth. Consideration is not just about money. It's about an exchange of value. That value can be anything: a service, an object, or even giving up a legal right like the right to sue someone. As long as both people have some skin in the game, you've got consideration. Okay, so the contract is born. We've got all 4 ingredients. It's official. But what happens now? Let's follow its journey, its whole life cycle, from that initial promise to the finished product. The best way to think about it is like a 3-act play. Act 1 is the negotiation. That's the whole offer and acceptance dance we just talked about. Act 2 is the executory phase. This is when the promises have been made, but nobody's acted on them yet. And the grand finale, Act 3, is when it's executed. Everything's done, promises are kept, and the story comes to a close. Let's just hang out in that middle stage for a second. The executory contract. This is the period of suspense, The freelancer hasn't delivered the work yet, the client hasn't paid yet, but they are both totally legally bound by their promises. This is the phase where the contract is really alive and kicking. Of course, not every story has a perfectly happy ending. Sometimes people break their promises. In the legal world, this is called a breach of contract. So what happens when somebody doesn't hold up their end of the deal? What can you actually do about it? Well, when a contract gets broken, you basically have a toolkit with 4 main options. For little things, you might just choose acceptance of breach and move on. It's just not worth the fight. Now, if you were lied to or forced into the deal, you can ask a court for a rescission, which basically erases the contract like it never happened. The most common tool, though, is suing for dollar damages to get back any money you lost. And then there's the really unique one, specific performance. This is from when money just won't cut it, like buying a one-of-a-kind house. A court can actually force the other person to go through with the deal. Okay, let's bring all this home into the 21st century. Because let's be real, we're not just using pen and ink anymore. Most of our agreements these days, from the terms of service on an app to buying something online, it all happens on a screen. And I want to leave you with a really powerful pro tip for any of those pre-printed forms you have to sign. If you see a line you don't like, cross it out, write in your own terms, and make sure both you and the other person initial it. And get this, in a legal fight, those handwritten changes you made will almost always win out over the original printed text. It's a great reminder that your own pen can be mightier than their fine print. So there you have it. From a handshake deal with a friend to that terms of service button you're probably going to click on later today, contracts are literally everywhere. They are the language of trust, the language of commitment. Now that you know the ingredients, the life cycle, and what to do when things go south, the only real question left is, when that next agreement pops up, are you ready?